Hi everybody, I'm Karen Van Acker. I'm the Enlightened Influencer. I am finally back. I took about a month to just regroup, figure out next steps, and do some upgrades in how I want to approach the Enlightened Influencer. So I am creating a community here on YouTube, and what I am going to be doing is bringing my thoughts, my suggestions, my love to the group of people that decides to choose to follow me on YouTube. I had some very interesting things happen on the rest of my social media, so I'm going to be recreating my social media accounts. We don't need to go into all that, but I had to shut them down for a while. Just wasn't working. Anyway, I want to talk to you about resilience. We are going through, as all of us already know, a very challenging time. And it seems like every single thing that we are dealing with right now is overwhelming. Like, it's hard to do banking. It is hard to get groceries. It is hard to connect with people. It is hard to stay disconnected from people. It's hard to get your laundry done. It's hard to drive your car. It's hard to get everything. It's just everything. Like, the computer gets wonky. The cell service gets wonky. Just everything is so crazy right now. And it is overwhelming at times. Absolutely overwhelming. There are a jillion people on social media. There are a jillion people on the internet. There are just, there's an increase in a lot of negative things going on in the world. But there's actually an increase, a lot of positive things going on in the world too. We have figured out that the way that the world has been going to this point just stopped being functional, and that we needed to make some changes. There are people that absolutely believe that the pandemic is not real. There are people that absolutely won't leave their house because of the pandemic. There's not been one, I don't think there's been even 1 week this entire year where there hasn't been some sort of catastrophe. And I think it is Mother Nature, the universe's way of getting our attention and telling us that we need to be more mindful about how we're living and what we're doing. We need to be more careful with how clean our water is. We need to be more careful with how healthy our food is. We need to think about how our actions affect other people, because it is clear that our actions can actually lead to other people's life and or death based on this pandemic situation. We have become, as a nation in the US, as the world, a very greedy species. We are very entitled. We think about our needs before we think about the needs of other people. And that's not true for everybody. That's a generalization, of course. But, we have an increase in homelessness because of the skyrocketing price of everything. We have people who are unable to feed their families, who were two-income families. They can't afford to pay for their home or their apartment or whatever now, due to shutting down of their jobs because of the pandemic. So my conversation today on resilience is about thinking about, instead of focusing on all of the negative stuff that is happening to us, to them, to the world, focusing on what we can do about it. There are very few people that have access to the internet that don't have more than they absolutely need to survive. There is always stuff that we can do to help somebody else. There's always something that we can do to help ourselves. If you are feeling overwhelmed, terrified, and out of control, I really encourage you to take a moment and just sort of sit back. Take some deep breaths and just think about all of the things that you have in your life right now that are keeping you safe and keeping you well. We are an incredibly blessed people. Up until 100 years ago, even less than 100 years ago, people were not gifted with all of the things that we have. It was unheard of for people to afford a home of their own. It just was challenging. It was difficult. Clean water was hard. People's children worked from sunlight to dark. Little kids. We don't have any of that anymore. I'm not saying, and I'm not chastising anybody for feeling scared or anything like that right now, but what I'm saying is, instead of focusing on all of the things that aren't working in your life right now, try to focus on the things that are working and how blessed you are. If you have more than one change of clothes, that's a huge difference from 100 years ago. Most people 100 years ago only had a few things, very few things. We're super blessed. I know I have tons of stuff, and I live a small life. But I still look around myself every day and see all the stuff that I have and think, man, I own probably twice as much as any person owned at least 100 years ago. A regular person, not a wealthy person, but a regular person. I get to eat every day. I have electric lights in my house. I have air conditioning when it's hot and heat when it's cold. I have clothes that I can wear. And by thinking about just those small things, I can pull myself out of the dark thoughts that come into all of us, myself included, and I can change the way I'm looking at the world and calm down that fear. All right? Resilience is not avoiding the truth. Resilience is not pretending as if everything is okay. Resilience is learning to be strong even through the challenging times. Being able to find the silver lining in the dark cloud. Can be a pretty big dark cloud at times. But if there's a silver lining, and there always is, all you have to do is focus on that, and your body will feel better. Now, I'm a trauma therapist. I've been a therapist for over 14 years and mostly worked with major mental illness and trauma. I also work now, and have for all the 14 years, other therapists. Even therapists get scared. Even therapists have anxiety and panic, okay? But that doesn't mean that we stay there. The reason that we are good at what we do is because we have learned techniques to help ourselves and other people how to get through challenging things. I have a trauma history, but I have resolved my trauma history by learning techniques that help me get through when things are hard. It took a lot of time to learn how to do that. And there are still times when my body doesn't know that it isn't being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. We have in the bottom of our brain parts that will interact with the world without any thinking on our part. They just respond. We have an amygdala and a hippocampus who govern our responses to the environment, and even things in the environment that we're not even aware of, okay? So have you ever been out and all of a sudden, I'm gonna keep it in broad daylight, but maybe you're like walking on a trail in the forest or whatever, and all of a sudden sort of the hair on the back of your neck just stands up and you're like, ooh, this is scary, even though there doesn't seem to be anything to be afraid of. Probably there's something in your environment that you're not aware of, but that your body is very aware of. Trauma affects the body in that it makes it more sensitive to things that it thinks may be a problem for you. And it will cause you to react physiologically to that perception, that hindbrain stuff, that amygdala and hippocampus stuff that we don't have any control over, and cause your maybe heart to race and your eyes to get small, and maybe the blood will rush to your extremities and stuff so that you can run away from whatever it is that is scary in your environment. When you have a trauma history, your body reacts more to perceived threats as opposed to just real threats in the environment. We have some real threats in our environment right now. I mean, let's be real. We have a pandemic. We have a lot of fires. We have, killer bees or whatever, I don't know, is happening out there. There's job losses and fear of food losses and homelessness and things like that. Those are real threats. But even if we are not experiencing that, we can think that there are things that we have no control over, which is a perception, right? If we will step back from those perceived threats, take some deep breaths, and focus our energy on the things that we have to be grateful for. If you have a higher power, reach out to your higher power, your God, Mother Nature, whatever your spiritual belief systems are, and ask for some help and supports. You can calm those reactions in your body, okay? Even for the real threats. You have to get yourself out of the real threats first, though, because the body will continue to respond if you're still in a threat. But if you are in a perceived threat mode, like, oh my God, what am I going to do next month for the rent? If your rent is paid today, don't worry about it. Something will come along. A real threat is the rent was due 6 months ago, right? And we're moving out tomorrow. That's a real threat. That I can understand. Anyway, resilience is being able to reset yourself back to being okay in the moment by taking some steps to focus on what you have as opposed to what you don't have. Anyway, I really appreciate you watching this video. If you like what you saw today, please subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up. If you want to get notice whenever there's new videos, just hit that little bell that's down there, and I will see you soon.